I'm Sheila Hannon, creative producer of Show of Strength Theatre Company and creator of award-winning walking tour, Frankenstein in Bath. Not a lot of people know that Mary Shelley wrote most of the world's first science fiction novel next to the Pump Room in Bath in the winter of 1816. Even less well known is the role Bath's Queen's Square played in the Frankenstein story 2 years earlier, a sort of curtain raiser, a trailer for the tale to come. 2 years before Mary Shelley arrived, a distraught girl fled to Bath to stay with her father at number 6 Queen's Square. Number 6 was a lodging house, and surely a very superior one. The distraught girl's father was very rich indeed. His name was Mr. Westbrook, and his distraught daughter was called Harriet. 2 years later, when Mary Shelley arrived in September 1816, her lodgings were also superior. 5 Abbey Churchyard was literally next door to the Pump Room. Mary arrived with her baby son, William, baby William's nurse, and her stepsister, Claire Claremont. Percy Shelley would join them shortly. Mary also arrived with plenty of baggage. During the 5 months she spent in Bath, she had at least 5 secrets she was desperate to keep. The first was that her name wasn't Mary Shelley, although that's what she called herself. Mary wasn't married to Percy Shelley. Her name was still Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin. She was just 19, and her first child with Percy had died the previous year. Percy Shelley was 5 years older, and they'd eloped 2 years before, around the time the distraught Harriet Westbrook came to stay with her father. When Mary eloped with Percy, her stepsister Claire Claremont had accompanied them as chaperone, and they'd been a threesome ever since. By 1816, they were notorious in certain circles as Shelley and his 2 wives, and always on the move, just like Frankenstein's creature. When they rocked up in Bath, they were fresh from Switzerland and a visit to Lord Byron at the beautiful Villa Diodati on the shores of Lake Geneva. And it had been there, in Geneva, in June 1816, 3 months before they arrived in Bath, that Mary started writing Frankenstein. Mary wasn't married to Percy Shelley because Percy was already married to Harriet Westbrook, the distraught girl who'd fled to Bath 2 years earlier. Percy had eloped with Harriet when she was a 15-year-old schoolgirl and he was 18. Running away had been Harriet's idea. She hated school and was angry with her father. Percy also loathed authority in any form. He'd just been expelled from Oxford for writing a pamphlet on atheism. Percy told a friend he wasn't in love with Harriet, but running away was right up his street, so off they went. When they married in Scotland, Harriet was 16 and Percy 19. Soon there was a child, a daughter, Ianthe, and within months, Harriet was pregnant again. At which point, the now 21-year-old Percy met 16-year-old Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin and did the same again, eloped with a 16-year-old. Marriage didn't matter, he told Mary, because they didn't believe in it anyway. Hey babe, rock and roll. When Harriet Westbrook, the real Mrs. Shelley, realised what was happening, she was distraught and fled to Bath. John Westbrook, her father, had made his fortune running the Mount Coffee House near London's Grosvenor Square, haunt of 18th century glitterati, including Lawrence Sterne. John Westbrook lived in London, but in summer 1814 he was staying at 6 Queen's Square, now part of the Francis Hotel, and a close neighbour of Bath Royal Literary and Scientific Institution. The distraught Harriet arrived in Bath with her baby daughter and pregnant with her second child. Desperate for news and probably hoping to win Percy back, she wrote to a friend of his, enclosing a letter for him. The envelope is marked July 1814 and written from 6 Queen's Square. My dear sir, you will greatly oblige me by giving the enclosed to Mr. Shelley. I would not trouble you, But it is now 4 days since I've heard from him, which to me is an age. Will you write by return of post and tell me what has become of him? If you tell me that he is well, I shall not come to London. But if I do not hear from you or him, I shall certainly come, as I cannot endure this dreadful state of suspense. You are his friend, and you can feel for me. I remain yours truly, Harriet Shelley. As Harriet waited anxiously in Bath's Queen's Square, her husband was in London, wooing the teenage Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin. A lot of this story is basically EastEnders with posh people and poetry. Or rather, Percy was posh, minor aristocracy, the son and heir of Sir Timothy Shelley. The Westbrooks were rich, but with a background in coffee houses, very definitely trade. The day after Harriet's letter arrived, Percy Shelley visited Mary's home, ostensibly to see her father, the writer William Godwin, who Percy worshipped. But Mary's father was out, and Percy's friend later described what happened next. Percy, he said, began to pace impatiently about the Godwins' room. Then the door was partially and softly opened. A thrilling voice called, "Shelley?" A thrilling voice answered, "Mary!" And he darted out of the room like an arrow from the bow of the far-shooting king. A very young female, fair and fair-haired, a frock of tartan, an unusual dress in London at that time, had called him out of the room. Her quietness certainly struck me. Possibly also, for I am not quite sure on this point, her paleness and piercing look. Meanwhile, at 6 Queen's Square, Harriet Shelley also paced anxiously, but in vain. Her husband had gone for good. Later, Harriet wrote to a friend, "Mr. Shelley is living with Godwin's 2 daughters, one by Mary Wollstonecraft, the other the daughter of his present wife, called Claremont. Mary was determined to seduce him. She is to blame. She heated his imagination by talking of her mother and going to her grave with him every day, till at last she told him she was dying in love for him. She asked him, why could we not all live together? I as his sister, she as his wife. He had the folly to believe this possible and sent for me, then residing at Bath. You may suppose how I felt at the disclosure. I was laid up for a fortnight after. I could do nothing for myself. He begged me to live. The doctors gave me over. They said it was impossible. I saw his despair, the agony of my beloved sister, and owing to the great strength of my constitution, I lived. Here I am, my dear friend, waiting to bring another infant into this woeful world. Next month I shall be confined. He will not be near me, no. He cares not for me now. He never asks after me or sends me word how he's going on. In short, the man I once loved is dead. This is a vampire. His character is blasted forever. Nothing can save him now. If you knew what I have suffered, your heart would drip blood for my miseries. Adieu, my dear friend. May you be happy, is the best wish of her who sincerely loves you, Harriet Shelley. Mary Shelley had at least 5 secrets while she was in Bath, and the first was that she wasn't Mary Shelley. The second was that her stepsister, the infamous Claire Claremont who travelled with her, was pregnant with Lord Byron's child. To say Claire pursued Byron is an understatement. She wrote him letters, stalked him, doorstepped him at his London home, or EastEnders. Byron finally agreed to meet her, and there was a brief affair before he dumped her. In 1816, Bath seems to have been the sort of place where a single woman in a pickle could discreetly have a child, and it was probably why they chose to come to Bath. At some point, Claire moved from their lodgings next to the pump room to New Bond Street and into accommodation run by a Mrs. Gilbert, where Byron's child was born in January 1817. Percy Shelley comes and goes while they're in Bath, always on the move, Percy, politically, sexually, geographically, the right cause, the perfect woman, always somewhere just around the corner. And when things got complicated, Percy would go off house hunting to find somewhere to live after Bath. And here is 19-year-old Mary writing to Percy from New Bond Street. He's off on another jaunt, leaving her to cope alone with her baby, the nurse, and the 8 months pregnant Claire Claremont. Claire, several months younger than Mary, is still just 18. Mary writes to Percy. New Bond Street, Bath, 6th of December, 1816. Sweet elf, I was awakened this morning by my pretty babe and dressed time enough to take my painting lesson from Mr. West, and thank God finished that tedious, ugly picture I've been so long about. I've also finished the 4th chapter of Frankenstein, which is a very long one, and I think you'd like it. And where are you? And what are you doing, my blessed love? In the choice of a residence, oh dear Shelley, pray be not too quick, or attach yourself too much to one spot. Ah, were you indeed a winged elf, and could soar over mountains and seas, and could pounce on a little spot? A house with a lawn, a river or lake, noble trees, divine mountains, that should be our little mouse hole to retire to. But never mind this, give me a garden, and absentia Claire, and I will thank my love for many favours. Oh, the blue eyes of your sweet boy are staring at me while I write this. He's a dear child, and you love him tenderly. Tell me, shall you be happy to have another little smaller? You will look grave on this, but I do not mean anything. Adieu, sweetest. Love me tenderly, and think of me with affection whenever anything pleases you greatly. Your affectionate girl, Mary. I have not asked Claire, but I dare say she would send her love. Meow. I dare say she would. Well, I hope the story so far has you hooked. If you want the rest of it and the other 3 secrets, you'll have to do Frankenstein in Bath, the walking tour that takes you where it happened and reveals all. It was launched in 2016 for the 200th anniversary of Mary Shelley starting her novel. In 2017, the tour got Best Live Performance at the Creative Bath Awards. In 2018, to mark the 200th anniversary of the novel's publication, and thanks to Bath Royal Literary and Scientific Institution, we got a plaque to Mary Shelley in front of the pump room. It was unveiled by Sir Christopher Frayling, who'd tried to get a plaque over 40 years earlier, but was told Frankenstein was a bit too Hollywood. Until 2018, there was nothing anywhere in the city to mark Mary Shelley and Frankenstein. Now, Bath is in the top 5 Gothic literature destinations, with Whitby for Dracula and Haworth for the Brontes. Whatever next? A House of Frankenstein? Check it out. You can find out about Frankenstein in Bath and our other award-winning tours in Bristol and Bath on our website, showofstrength.org.uk.